Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a glorious, great Christmas weekend. I know I did. It was a lot of fun spending time with family, my grandkids, all that kind of thing. So I was truly blessed over the Christmas holidays, and I hope you were as well. Now, there were a couple of big stories that happened over the weekend, and we're going to talk briefly about them in just a moment. The Nashville bombing situation, and of course, President Trump signing a couple of bills over the weekend. So we'll talk about that. But the main focus we're going to talk about today actually is Georgia. What is happening in Georgia? What needs to happen in Georgia? And what the ramifications could be if the Democrats actually win either of, not let alone both of those seats in the runoff Senate election. So we'll start with the article. Pelosi, she came out over the weekend and she said victory in Georgia would give Democrats essentially a super majority. And believe me, Democrats will always act as if. So we'll explain exactly what she means and what that could mean for America going forward. And then, of course, part of that, and we've talked about this before, but believe me, it's going to happen. The Democrats now have come out and said that they are going to promise you that you, the American taxpayer, will be paying directly for abortions. Your taxpayer money will go directly to abortions. That is a promise, and I believe them. Before we go any further, I always have to admit or talk about our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited, otherwise known as BDU. We come to you live every day, Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock Eastern, or as close as we can get to it, from Big Daddy Studios in Gainesville, Florida. Big Daddy Unlimited is your Second Amendment headquarters. They literally can send factory direct pricing, guns, ammunition, tactical gear, swag, you name it. If it has anything to do with the Second Amendment, they are all about it, and they can send it directly to your doorstep at factory direct pricing. And I call them your Second Amendment headquarters, not only because of all the items they have for sale, but they're also defending your Second Amendment rights on a daily basis. We also have, keeping with our patriotic theme, our good friends at patriotthreads.org. Patriotthreads.org, apparel with a purpose. They basically can set you up for any kind of charity event. They sell all kind of patriotic themed shirts and stuff like that. They can set you up for an event for you if you want to have it. Check it out. Patriotthreads.org. Remember the promo code JMT. John Martin Talks, JMT promo code for 20% off. Check it out. And we started telling you about this a couple of weeks ago, but I got to mention, because we're very excited about it here at John Martin Talks, we're now on a new YouTube channel. Of course, we still have John Martin Talks YouTube, which is growing every day. We greatly appreciate it. But we are on Recoil TV. Now, I talked about Big Daddy Unlimited, Second Amendment. If you want another source for Second Amendment about how to use the latest products that are out there related to your Second Amendment rights, check out Recoil TV on YouTube. And we now have a John Martin channel on there. So we're very excited about that. All right, we're going to start talking about Georgia, but I mentioned before that there are two big stories that happened, and I don't want you to think I'm ignoring them. First of all, what happened in Nashville on Christmas Day, that bombing. Man, what a tragedy that was. How blessed we are that it could have been a whole lot worse. We're not going to really talk about it because it's literally an unfolding situation. They have a person of interest, or at least the remains of that person of interest. And there's all kind of speculation going on out there as to what the motivation, what the target was, all of that. So we're going to let that play out a little bit before we actually make a whole lot of comments. My only comment would be that it could have been much, much worse. I love the city of Nashville. Tennessee, such a great state, such a beautiful state. I got relatives up there, as well still. And it's tragic no matter where it happens. But in Nashville, it is a crying shame. So if things change on that story breaking, we'll talk about it in the days to come. Also, over the weekend, President Trump had threatened to veto the coronavirus package and the stimulus package and the government shutdown, the omnibus funding bill. He ended up signing them both. Now, we could get into all kind of debates about whether he should have. I think he did us a good service in he being the president, bringing to light what we probably already knew or expected, that there's all kind of fraud or not, all kind of perks, shall we say, for things that have zero to do with the United States of America, let alone its citizens. Let me just say this. In order for us to change something, we're going to get into this a little bit in what's happening in Georgia. We're going to have to wake up. As a country, we're going to have to wake up. And I'm not just talking about a lot of people that listen to this show. I know that you are awoke and getting woker, as they say, by the day. But we as an American people, if we're going to change this crazy spending, it's going to take a Herculean, I guess is how you would say it, effort by the American people. Because these politicians cannot help themselves. They simply cannot. And now they should be able to, and I'm talking about all of them. Republicans, Democrats, whatever. Washington is a corrupting place. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The only shot we have, and it's not even term limits, and I'm not opposed to term limits. Term limits are something I used to be opposed to, but I've come 180 degrees and I'm all for. But they're not the ultimate solution, because if you have just term limits and that's all you do, then you're going to have the ones that have all the power and the know-how are the ones that never leave there, the bureaucrats, the lobbyists, that kind of thing. So it's not the solution. It's a part of the solution. But the only real solution is for us to be an energized, activated, motivated citizenry once again. We really have to do. We have to take what we did with President Trump and magnify that by a factor maybe of 10. We've got to educate, motivate, and activate people who are sitting on the couch and not doing it, who are not plugged into our republic, who actually think we have a democracy and not a republic. We've got to educate them. My commitment to you is that as long as I have this microphone and this ability, thanks to people like Big Daddy Unlimited, Recoil TV, and I talked about PatriotThreads.org, all people like that, and you, the listeners, at the top of that list, I'm going to keep trying to motivate, educate, and activate people battling ignorance and apathy on a daily basis. But we have got to clean house in Washington, D.C. All of them. If I could pull a lever and it would just flush them all out, even some of my friends, I'd flush them. I'd vote to get rid of all of them. But we're going to have to primary everybody. It's going to take a lot of work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to have to weed these people out. We're going to have to take over both parties. American people are going to have to take back the Democratic Party from the progressive leftists, and we conservatives, MAGA hat wearing sons of guns, we got to take over the Republican Party from stem to stern. We really do, from top to bottom. We have to, and some of that starts right here in Georgia. So let's get into it. But the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, if we want things to ultimately change in Washington, we're going to have to do even more than what we did getting President Trump elected. It's just a fact. We're just going to have to face it. Or we can just go home and live out our lives and watch the country go down that virtual toilet. I mean, that's really our choices. All right, we're going to start with a Breitbart article. Nancy Pelosi, Georgia Senate victories would give Democrats supermajority-like ability to pass legislation. So Nancy, there she is, Super Nancy. Look at her. She's so happy. She's, going to be the House Speaker. She doesn't care. She doesn't care if she wins by 1 vote or 100 votes. She's going to act as if. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said during a virtual Sojourner of Truth Project event last week that ousting Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, those are the 2 Republican senators that are in a runoff in Georgia, will give them significant power to pass legislation because they can pass bills with a simple majority in the Senate using reconciliation. So before we go any further, let's hear Nancy in her own words. So we're going to play a video where she talks exactly about what we just mentioned in the opening. Check it out.
You know how I'm about numbers. When we win these 2 seats, plus Kamala Harris breaking the tie, it'll be like getting 60 votes, because once we have even a simple majority, we can vote for reconciliation, which means you only need 51 votes to pass certain legislation.
Wow. I mean, just hearing the term Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie, I don't know about you, but it makes me a bit queasy, especially early in the morning. What Nancy is talking about is avoiding the filibuster and the 60 votes needed to overturn, to end the filibuster. What she's talking about is this thing of reconciliation. And so what that means is basically the House would pass a version of a bill, the Senate would pass a version of the bill, and then they would meet in a reconciliation kind of predetermined committee to hammer out the details of that bill and get on the same page, and then it could pass by simple majority, especially if it is a budgetary issue, which they can make everything a budgetary issue. One thing about the Democrats, now Republicans, and we'll get into it in just a minute, have used this same tactic as well. But let's just face it, when it comes to pulling the levers of power within the government, the Democrats are better at it. One thing, they're more committed at it. They don't worry about what their own voters even think, let alone the people across the aisle. They have no worry about that. It's raw power, and we will see it absolutely abused under Nancy Pelosi. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. The Senate typically needs 60 votes to pass legislation through the chamber. However, some bills in the Senate can pass with a simple majority through a budgetary reconciliation, kind of what I was just talking about. Reconciliation allows Congress to pass bills affecting spending, revenue, or deficit levels. Now, that is a pretty broad area, and they can, believe me, they can manipulate it in multiple ways. Republicans actually did this during Trump's first couple of years here. Let me give you a couple examples. Reconciliation used reconciliation to pass the Trump tax cuts and the Jobs Act, as they tried to use they tried to use reconciliation during their failed attempt to repeal and replace Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. Democrats could use reconciliation to pass bills at similar scale, the tax cuts bills or the ACA repeal bills. Now, let me just tell you, it shows you the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. The Republicans talked about Obamacare, repealing it for like 8 years, did they not? And then President Trump comes in there, and we tend to forget this sometime, that President Trump, in his first 2 years in office, had both the Senate, the House, and the Supreme Court. And yet he was fought at every turn by people like Paul Ryan in the House. And of course, Obamacare, the Republicans cast all kind of votes about repealing Obamacare when it was for show, when they knew it wasn't going to have any effect. When push came to shove and they could actually do something about it, what happened? Well, we were victims of what I call the 2 Johns. And I'm not talking about JMT, John Martin Talks here. I'm talking about John McCain, God rest his soul, who will now go down in history as the greatest senator that the Democratic Party ever had. Yeah, I said it. He is going to go down in history as the greatest senator the Democratic Party ever had. So John McCain came in and saved Obamacare, and the other John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, is the reason why we even have Obamacare in the first place. He actually carved out a big wide hole for Obamacare in the U.S. Constitution. And John Roberts is a piece of work. He is an enemy, in my opinion, to anything conservative. He doesn't have a conservative bone in his body from what I can see. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, and Representative Ocasio-Cortez of New York have noted that gaining control of the Senate majority would enable Democratic leftist agenda. And if you don't believe me, You take these people at their word, and I'm sure you've probably seen this, but we're going to play a snippet because we're going to talk about Georgia now. What needs to happen in Georgia. And let me just back up and say, I'm not even saying that, hey, I'm a huge fan of Purdue or Loeffler, Kelly Loeffler. I don't know them that well at all. I know the other side, and I know that Schumer would be empowered. And let's take these progressives, because I've been telling you this. If you're new to the show, first of all, howdy, how are you? Welcome. We are so glad to have you here. Secondly, you need to know this. Progressives, take them at their word. You can always pretty much take them at their word because they will tell you they certainly have been infected now with Trump derangement syndrome, so they don't hold anything back. They tell you exactly what they are going to do and what is on their mind. And Chuck Schumer said this immediately after the November 3rd elections. Check it out.
Yeah, and then we change the world. Yeah! I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Mr. Schumer? Now we take Georgia, and then we change America.
How about that? The two things that really stand out to me on that is how he was in that crowd of people in New York with all that crowd of people. We know that New York is supposedly like the epicenter of corona, and yet he's out there with no mask. He doesn't put a mask on till he says it a second time. He talks about changing the world. Then he puts on a mask because he's going to be on TV. That just shows you that they don't believe a thing that they're saying about all this, to me. Now, have you heard this term, American exceptionalism? American exceptionalism. In other words, America is not only exceptional, but we are unique in the world. And there's just really no question about that. There's no other place on this planet like the United States of America. Never even really been dreamed of like the United States of America. And if you look at our Constitution, yeah, there are constitutions all over the world. Even some communist countries have constitutions. But our Constitution is unique and special because it empowers the individual. It protects the individual from the overreach of a bloated government. It's not some people think just the opposite. Some people think that the Constitution empowers the government. It actually does not. It is our consent to the government to govern us under certain restrictions. It limits the power of government. Now, of course, it's been ignored, trashed, and everything else. So I'm not saying that we are currently living under a constitutional republic. We have the right to. We should expect to. People fought and died for us to. But I've been saying long before President Trump came on the scene that we've been living in a post-constitutional era. And Donald Trump actually put the brakes on that and exposed the rot in the Tree of Liberty like no one has before. But American exceptionalism is real. And people like Chuck Schumer don't like it. They don't like American exceptionalism. They not only do they not like it, they want to destroy it. They feel some kind of guilt behind it. And I believe that the world is a much better place with American exceptionalism. And so I'm always going to tout it. I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to speak about it. But make no mistake what we're up against. These people like Chuck Schumer don't believe in the America that people like myself believe in. They simply don't. They actually want to change it. You heard what he said in that video. First we take Georgia and we change the world. And then he says, of course, we change the United States of America. Because if the changes that they're talking about happen in the United States of America, then the world will be changed in a very bad way. If you don't believe me, if you think, oh, Chuck Schumer's just spouting out, keep this in mind. Governor Cuomo of New York, Andrew Cuomo, right? He is supposedly up for Attorney General. Behind the scenes, they say that he's on the top of the list to be the next Attorney General. God help us if Joe Biden actually becomes president. That's what we're dealing with. Now, remember what Cuomo said about America just a couple of years ago. Check it out.
We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great.
It's good enough right there. I mean, I don't even want to hear it anymore. America was never that great. Not that it was great. We can make it great again, whatever. It was never that great. Now, what pisses me off about that every time I play it, beyond just the obvious that America has been great, is great, can be great, and we can make it even greater again, because we are exception. There is an exception. That doesn't make us perfect, by the way. I'm not saying that. But when it comes to anything man has created to govern over man, there is nothing that has ever been like the United States of America. But what really irks me about what Cuomo said there about America was never really that great flies in the face of his own family story. Love him, hate him, whatever. It doesn't even have anything to do with Cuomo himself. But if you look at the Cuomo, and there are thousands, if not millions, of Cuomo stories like this. Only in America can you be an immigrant, very impoverished Italian family, which the Cuomos were, not, back in their generation, and rise. Think about this. Think about the success of his immediate family. I'm not even saying you need to like it, but you have to admire this. His father was governor of New York prior to him, and almost became president of the United States, was under serious consideration by, hang on, I got to get my notes back up, to be and I think he gave the keynote speech at the Democratic National Convention. He's dead now, God rest his soul. But he was governor and within a whisper of being potentially president of the United States. Then passed down his sons. You got Andrew Cuomo, who is the current governor. God help us, could be the next attorney general. And his brother, Chris Cuomo, on CNN. I mean, I don't like the guy, but you got to admit, he's one of the top paid personalities in the news. So their family history shows that America is the greatest country on earth when you can do what the Cuomo family did. Yet he can stand up in front of the cameras with all the blessings that America has given him and his family over the decades and the years, even maybe centuries. I don't know prior to the immediate Cuomo family, but they must have done something right to get there. But America gave them all of that, and he could stand there and look us in the eye in the camera and say America was never that great. That's sick, man. That's a sickness. I guess it's part of Trump derangement syndrome as well. But to me, American exceptionalism, and I guess I get on a little bit of a rant here, but I believe that America is exception, and I know for a fact because I'm a student of history. I actually have a degree in it, believe it or not. Yeah, I'm an educated fool, I suppose. And I know just how special this place we call home really and truly is. And for them to just discredit it so cavalier like Cuomo, it never really was that great again, and to realize what people like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi have in store for us if they get any majority, let alone a supermajority, it scares me, it breaks my heart, but it also activates and motivates me, because I ain't going down without a fight. I'm telling you right now. And so I'm not going to go back and lay on the couch. I'm going to fight until I can't fight anymore. And then I'm going to fight a little bit more until I'm gone. And I'm going to try to pass this down, like Reagan said, it's not in the bloodstream. We got to pass it down. And so I'm trying to live up to what Ronald Reagan, by the way, the first president I ever voted for was Ronald Reagan. So I'm trying to live up to that legacy as well, and pass it along. Help me out. As I tell you all the time, not everybody can be a fighter, but everybody can support those of us in the fight. So please go to above our show. I don't think I mentioned this at the top. If you want to look at our sponsors, go to no matter when or where you're watching the show, and we're on increasing platforms every day. Go above the video and scroll down on it where it shows what we're talking about today, and you'll see a link to our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited. You'll see a link to patriotthreads.org. Remember the promo code JMT to get 20% off. Check that out, because that's how you can support and keep people like me in the fight. And I appreciate it very much. We're also on America's Voice News, not only on their Facebook page in the morning. Good morning. How you guys doing? Howdy. Glad to have you. We're rebroadcast along their streaming service on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Channel 219, Dish Network, the Pluto channel. and you can download your free app on your Android or your iPhone, America's Voice News, a strong alternative to the mainstream media. So if you're looking for something beyond Fox News and CNN, check out America's Voice News. But America was not that great, man. Ocasio-Cortez said the Democrats need to win in Georgia to make sure that we don't have a Republican Senate majority. This is Ocasio-Cortez. She said that we win these races in Georgia, that we secure a Democratic Senate majority, and check this out, so that we don't have to negotiate. We don't have to negotiate. In other words, they can push their agenda through because she knows that Biden's going to sign off on anything that they have. God help us if he becomes president. And they're just going to push it right through. And you know what really worries me, beyond the fact that I take her at her word that that's what they do, that they may not have to negotiate anyway. I'm not even saying that that re-electing in the runoff these two Senate candidates, Perdue and Loeffler, is going to keep us from having to deal with these Democrats, and that Republicans aren't going to cave. Because what really worries me is that they liable to the Republicans, especially if Biden becomes president, God help us, are likely to cave anyway. Mitt Romney is relishing this. You know, here's the thing. Mitt Romney, and I love that picture of him, man. Yes, it's Photoshop, Facebook, I'm pretty sure. I think it is, but it might not be. He was down at some of those Black Lives Matter rallies, remember that. But Mitt Romney is hoping, I bet he is hoping and praying for a slightly different reason, that Loeffler and at least Loeffler and or Perdue, one of them win. Because this guy, not because he wants Republicans to have any kind of hold on power, what he's hoping to be is the swing vote in the Senate. That's what this dude wants to be. He wants to be the star of the show. Think about that, because I guarantee you it's true. He wants to be that. Mitt Romney, man. And bipartisanship, in case you're new to the show, let me explain to you. I know what bipartisanship is supposed to mean, but let me tell you what it really means in Washington. It means, without a doubt, Republicans cave. Bipartisanship means Republicans cave, because I challenge you. I put this challenge, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I just can't think of it. So maybe you could help me out. Name me a time when Republicans were adamantly for something and Democrats were adamantly opposed to it, and the Democrats changed their mind and said, you know, those old Republicans are right. What'd that gal that's working for Biden say? A bunch of effers? That those effers are right, and that we're going to change our mind and come over to the Republican side. It never happens. But I could give you a laundry list of times when Republicans said, oh, we're never going to vote for that, and turned around and caved. So bipartisanship means Republicans cave. There is no question about that. And so I am not saying that if we reelect Perdue and Loeffler and hold on to the Senate, that is the end of our troubles. I just know what will happen if we don't. I can't guarantee you what will happen if we do hold on to those races, but I know what's going to happen if we don't. Now, I know that the real fight is on January 6th. Of course, the runoff in Georgia is January 5th. So back-to-back days, we got January 6th is the beginning and the end all of whatever's going to happen with President Trump. We know that, right? I mean, he's either going to capture the presidency, get what rightfully is his, or he's not on January 6th. So I get that. And President Trump is exposed. That's why we need that vote. We need at least one U.S. senator to join with Mo, what is his name? I can't think of his name now. Mo, and he's not a stooge, by the way, in Alabama. I can't think of his name. I should have written it down. But Congressman from Alabama is trying to get the Electoral College to swing for the president. He needs one Republican senator for it to be pressed to a vote. Of course, people like Mitch McConnell don't want that to happen because they don't want to have to vote. And he says, oh, it might affect the outcome in Georgia, which is nonsense. Total nonsense. What Mitch McConnell doesn't want to happen, and what we need to happen, is for the rot in the tree of liberty to be exposed. We need to know who these people are in the U.S. Senate, in the U.S. House. I'm talking about Republicans, because we need to get rid of all the Democrats. Let me just make that. Democrats need to be voted out, period. Until you guys out there in the Democratic Party take your party back from the hardcore progressives, we can't trust any of them. The one thing, I'm not saying trust the Republicans. I know we can't trust the Democrats because they're lock stop behind Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They just are. But the Republicans need to be exposed so we can get them out between 2022 and 2024. All of them. We need to replace all of them. That's our challenge, ladies and gentlemen. That is our challenge as patriots. Can we hang in there? Can we be awakened enough? Can we get out of our slumber? Can we get over our resentments? And let me just say this. I'm just going to say it. I know a lot of you aren't going to like it when I say it. Let's just, for the sake of conversation, assume that President Trump does not make it January 6th and that Joe Biden becomes, God help us, president. That doesn't mean obviously we're going to be heartbroken if that happens. I know I will be. Resentful, everything else. We're going to have all kind of emotions going on. The one thing we cannot do is quit and go home. We can't do it because, as I've said before, if this fight was only about Donald Trump, if the whole MAGA agenda of America First, Make America Great Again, was simply about one man, as great as that man is, it was doomed to failure from the very start because human beings come and they go. That's just the nature of life. I went to a funeral over the Christmas weekend to a very dear friend of our family. And it was sad. And it was uplifting at the same time because this person died as a true believer and a Christian. And so I was surrounded by a lot of people who were heartbroken and uplifted at the same time. And you can be that way. You can be heartbroken and uplifted and inspired at the same time because life has to go on. Our country deserves to go on. The sacrifices that were made for us to be free in this nation in spite of the problem, because the problems we're facing now are, they're tough. Are they too tough to handle? Well, tell that to the people that stormed the beaches of Normandy. Tell that to the barefoot soldiers in the snow at Valley Forge. Tell them that we got it way too tough to fight. I just don't believe it. So this is our challenge. This is our challenge, regardless of what happens with President Trump. Our challenge is to get activated, educated, motivated, somewhere in all those three words, and get busy. And it starts right in Georgia. So if you're in Georgia, obviously you need to get out and vote for these two Republicans. You cannot give total power to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. You just can't. So it starts there. But it doesn't end there, ladies and gentlemen. We have got to take our country back. But you know what we got to take it back? Not from Barack Obama, not from Nancy Pelosi and Ocasio-Cortez. We have to take our country back from our own ignorance and apathy. Because Thomas Jefferson told us centuries ago that you cannot be both ignorant and free. If you do, you want what never was and never will be. So we have got to educate ourselves, motivate ourselves, and activate ourselves as a country once again. And so tuning into this show, I think, helps that. But get others to tune in. Wake other people up. Because the very fabric of our nation, or whether we're going to exist, and I'll say this and I'll close out this story and we'll move on to the next one, which is kind of related. There's two people I said, if you're new to the show, you may not have heard this. You may think it's crazy. And I probably am. I'm a fish whisperer. This is my psychic sidekick, by the way, Billy Bob Bass. He's got a Twitter handle. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1. And mine is at John Martin Talks. Yeah, make fishing great again. I'm kind of a fish whisperer. As you listen to the show, you'll figure out how crazy I am. Some of us are sicker than others. But I trust two people, maybe even three, in Washington right now. I trust Donald Trump. I trust Donald Trump. I actually trust Chuck Schumer, and I guess I trust to a certain extent Nancy Pelosi. You say, what do you mean you trust? I trust them to be just as vile and change America as they said. I take Schumer at his word. If he gets to be the majority leader, they're going to change America and change the world, and they don't believe in American exceptionalism. But if you're unmotivated in Georgia and you care about the MAGA agenda at all, if you can't say you're a Trump supporter, in my opinion, and not vote in Georgia, don't take my word for it. Take President Trump. This is what he said just before he went down and did a rally in Georgia about the importance of this Senate seat. Check it out.
Just for a second. So I'll be going there on Saturday night, and maybe I'll go twice. It's very important that we win those races. These are two great people. I know them both very well. They're both great people, and I think the two people, I beat the one gentleman. He ran against a congressional candidate who was an excellent person, frankly, and he didn't even live in the right community, and that's how we won. So now I have to beat him again. He lost as a congressman. He was going for Congress, as you remember, and now against Karen, and now he's running against David. He doesn't deserve to be there. He's a lightweight. And the other one is either a communist or a socialist. I can't figure that one out yet. But he's either a communist or a socialist, probably a communist. This is not for Georgia. And I just want to tell my people, don't be disappointed yet, because this race is far from over. But I'm going on Saturday night. I'll be in Georgia. We're going to have a tremendous crowd. They're looking for the right site. Probably we'd love to take one of the big stadiums, but you can't because of the COVID. So we'll have an outdoor form of probably an airport. Most likely it's an airport. They're looking for the biggest space. And we'll have, tens of thousands of people show up. But I think it's very important. And then I may go a second time, depending on how they're doing. I may go a second time. But they're two
You got to vote. Take Donald Trump's word. He's telling you, you got to vote in Georgia. So get out and vote. Early voting, I think, goes through, there's 8 days to the election as of this broadcast. There's early voting. I was listening to a show coming in this morning. I think there's early voting on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Check your local laws in Georgia of this week. If you don't live in Georgia and you have people down there, call them, email them. You can donate money to them, to the candidates, all that kind of stuff. There's multiple ways to help. I know people in our area are doing it. And Donald Trump himself just announced last night that he is going down the day before the election, so I guess that would be January 4th. Considering all he's got on the line, he is still going down to Georgia to get out the vote for those two Republican candidates, Perdue and Loeffler. So I trust Donald Trump. That's good enough for me. It should be good enough for you in Georgia. So please get out and vote. And if you're wondering what could happen if Nancy Pelosi gets that majority she's talking about, because one thing about Democrats, they're going to act as if it doesn't matter. Nancy Pelosi has acted as if she controlled Washington since Trump became president. Has she not? Now imagine what she would do if she had real power. I take these people at their words. This is one of the issues, and I picked this one specifically because it's a very emotional issue for a lot of people. But understand this. If Nancy Pelosi retains her speakership, which is going to be tough, but it looks like she will, and Loeffler and Perdue lose in Georgia, you are going to be paying, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter what you believe. You can have all the belief in the world. But trust me on this, you are going to be paying with your own money right out of your pocket for abortion. Check this out. This is from NBC News. Democrats promise Biden-era abortion showdown over Hyde Amendment. House Democrats have spent 2 years passing government funding legislation without picking a fight over abortion, but with President Donald Trump leaving office, God help us if that's true, party leaders say 2021 will be different. Man, I tell you what, has there ever been a president? Now, we've had a lot of presidents who were anti-abortion, but I want to show you this picture of Donald Trump. Now, it's a meme, I realize, but does it not say it all? Donald Trump cares more about life, the sanctity of life, and openly professes it, unabashedly, unapologetic proponent of life, regardless of how you feel about the issue. You have to admit that Donald Trump, man, has been out front in his support for babies, both born and unborn. And, of course, the other side, I played that Cuomo video where he said America was never that great. If you want to know what we're up against, I got to play this video of Andrew Cuomo signing an abortion bill that basically extends abortion rights in New York to, as Rush Limbaugh. I always pray for Rush Limbaugh when I say his name. But it's a bill signing of a couple of years ago that Cuomo did that extends abortion out to what Rush Limbaugh would call the fourth trimester. And look at how gleeful they are to sign this bill, regardless of how you feel about abortion. They're happy about the death of an infant. Check it out.
In a signing ceremony earlier tonight in Albany. The bill was first introduced in 2007 and removes abortion.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, we're all for it, baby. Yeah, I mean, I've said this before, but if I say it, it bears repeating. I don't even care what side of the issue you're on it. I can tell you for a fact, because I worked at a drug treatment center for like 15 years. And during that time, one of the saddest duties I had is it was my job to actually accompany some of our clients to abortion clinics. It wasn't about whether I was for it or against it. I was there to support them emotionally. And I had to, some of them from jail, some of that kind of stuff. And I can tell you this, and I'm not saying they're not out there, but I have never, ever met a woman that celebrated having an abortion. It was always a tearful, gut-wrenching thing for them, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just telling you, I've never seen it. I've never seen it. Yet you have these Democrats like Cuomo literally cheering like, they just won the Super Bowl. I don't get that. I don't get that no matter what side of the issue. Someone please explain it. Chime in on Facebook, YouTube, whatever you're watching. I will answer. I'll respond to everybody as quickly as I possibly can. I'm a little behind because of the holidays, but I'll get to you. But let me know, where am I wrong on this? What is there to celebrate? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Back to this article. Representative Rosa DeLauro, Democrat from Connecticut, who is set to chair the powerful House Appropriations Committee, said next year the House will eliminate the so-called Hyde Amendment, a decades-old policy that prohibits federal programs like Medicaid from paying for abortion. So what this is, the Hyde Amendment, and they think it's after a Representative Hyde from Illinois, former Republican. I don't think he's even still alive anymore. I'm not sure about it. Don't hold me to that. But anyway, the Hyde Amendment basically prohibits federal funds for paying directly for abortion. The reason I say directly is because indirectly we already pay for it. Because that we give, like, we being American people through our tax dollars, whether you like it or not, doesn't seem to be relevant. That's why we need to wipe them all out, really. But we give like $500 million annually to Planned Parenthood, just as one example. Now, they say they don't use any of that money for abortion. We know that's ridiculous because it's like once you put the money in a pool, it just means okay, I'm not spending this money on vacation. I'm spending this money on car repair. It's ridiculous. So we already do it. If they drop the Hyde Amendment, it'll just be open piggy bank, writing a check directly for abortion, and they're only going to go up. To me, it doesn't matter. Once again, it doesn't matter what side of the issue you're on. I shouldn't have to pay for someone's abortion. I just shouldn't. DeLauro said on December 8th hearing, this is this Congresswoman, hearing about the adverse effects on the Hyde Amendment. Adverse effects. What is adverse effect about keeping taxpayer money from paying for abortions? Please help me. Help me understand this. As I say, I'm not even trying to get on the merits of abortion one way or another. I just don't see how it's adverse to not take my money and pay for someone else's abortion. I don't get it. But this is what the Congresswoman said. This is the last year, talking about the Hyde Amendment. The time has come in the current moment to reckon with the norm, with the status quo. Reckon with the norm, with the status quo. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with this just normal status quo that taxpayer money should be used for abortion? Why should I don't get it. Please explain it to me. Why should I have to pay for your abortion? The Hyde Amendment is a discriminatory, this is what the Congresswoman said. The Hyde Amendment is a discriminatory policy, she said, arguing that it puts politicians between a woman and her doctor and is particularly harmful to rural and low-income women. How is it discriminatory? I don't get that either. You know, and how does it put a politician between the patient and the doctor? If anything, using taxpayer money does that, doesn't it? Why not take the politicians out of it? What do they have to do with it anyway? I don't get that. But that is a guaranteed, but this doing away with the Hyde Amendment is guaranteed to face Republican opposition, according to Richard Shelby, the chair of the Senate Appropriations from Alabama. I've never been a big fan of his, by the way. The Republican caucuses would resist it. This is what Mr. Shelby said. We've had the Hyde Amendment a long time, and I think it's pretty clearly embedded in the fabric of our legislation. I support the Hyde Amendment. Well, amen to you, sir. But I can tell you, if we don't get out and vote in Georgia, if you're listening up there, they're going to do away with the Hyde Amendment, and taxpayer money is going to be spent directly on abortions. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. The Hyde Amendment is named after the original sponsor, former Republican Congressman Henry Hyde. It is not, this is interesting, it is not a permanent statute and doesn't require repeal. It exists by being added every year since 1976 to essential legislation passed by Congress to fund the federal government. So it's just something they stick in, probably in this omnibus bill they just did, just to go along and get along. But let me just tell you for a fact, it's an opinion, but it's an opinionated fact. If the Republicans don't win in Georgia, you are going to be paying for abortions with federal taxpayer money, whether you like it or not. Take that to the bank. It is just going to be a fact. Check my time. We're pretty much out of time. So I'll just close on this, ladies and gentlemen. We have, because Biden has already come out and said that he supports this, by the way, doing away with the Hyde Amendment. God help us if he becomes president. We've got to fight. If not now, when? If not us, who? Hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Let's all pray for this great nation and our president, which is still Donald Trump. They both deserve it. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.